Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, WeatherTech, Hum by Verizon, RockAuto.com, and State Farm. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, Brian Robinson.
Hello and welcome to MotorWeek podcast number 187. Doing this with the B team once again as John Davis is out there on the road. Skeleton crew today, just online content coordinator Greg Carlos.
I'm here.
And Joe Ligo.
Also here.
One of our editors and podcast producer. We're doing things a little differently this time. We will give you a couple road test cars we've been working on lately, then get into some viewer questions
we got a big pile of
sent
them.
in. So, we'll try to get through as many of those as we can. So let's get right to the Dodge Durango SRT, the first, believe it or not, SRT version of the Durango after all these years. We've driven it, tested it. What do we think about it?
Yeah, it was always kind of surprising it took that long to get Durango SRT, and now that we have it, it's pretty awesome. Super fast, super comfortable, super big.
Loud.
Very loud. People know you're coming, and there's a lot to like about it. Not as powerful as a Trackhawk, but you have more space and still quite entertaining.
Yeah, it has a 392 Hemi. And you bring up the Trackhawk. We actually say in our road test that many of us prefer the Durango to the Trackhawk, despite...
That's the Jeep Grand Cherokee Trackhawk for the uninitiated.
Yeah, despite being down, 250 horsepower, maybe, or not sure the exact numbers. Why is that the case? Why do we prefer the Durango more?
I think it's just more useful, a little bit more tuned for the street, more comfortable. The Trackhawk to me was a little bit more frantic on the highway, even though it's still a pretty good highway cruiser considering what it is. The Durango is just even better, supple. Again, you can carry a lot more stuff and you can fit more people in it.
It's an SUV you could drive every day.
Sure.
Not that you couldn't drive a Trackhawk every day, but the Durango just is maybe a little bit, it's like 9/10, of the way there.
Yeah, the Trackhawk definitely has more of a razor's edge to it, whereas the Durango, it was softer, definitely more comfortable. And as great as it sounds, as soon as you back off the throttle and that thing goes into eighth, it quiets down big time.
Right, and I think, the Durango has 475 horsepower. I think people forget that's still a ton of horsepower. You say, a Hellcat has, 250 more horses. But do you really... Is 475 not enough? I thought it was more than satisfactory.
Yeah, it felt fast, and I like the fact that you're able, I think it still tows 200 pounds, I think. Or maybe, I believe that's the number. It might even be more than that. But they kept I know when Ford did Lightnings and other, high-performance SUVs over the years, it takes a huge hit out of their practicality. But
yeah, why does, when you do a performance trim level on a truck or an SUV, where theoretically you're adding a ton of horsepower, why does that lower your towing rating? Does it just changes to the suspension and stuff?
Yeah, I think the engine itself is so much harder on all the other parts. It's usually never a matter of engine. The towing ratings are based more on frame integrity and rear ends and transmissions more than anything else. So when you're already overworking all that stuff with a bigger engine, they don't want you to tow it much. I think that's more than anything.
Yeah.
But they kept all the capability and made an awesome Durango.
And it's funny, I think the SRT looks better, too, with the blackout trim and stuff, because I compared it to – because I edited the road test for it, and I put a shot of a Durango Citadel, the not full-out luxury, but a middle-level Durango, and with chrome and the chrome wheels and stuff. And I thought, boy, the SRT really looks better than the base or the other. I think the blackout and that sort of look with it, I think it really works. I think it gives new life to some body panels that are a little long in the tooth.
Yeah, agreed. Dodge doesn't do too many boring things anymore. Moving on, McLaren 570S Spider, the third vehicle to come in the sports series following the Coupe and the GT. Spider, of course, it means removable roof and supercar speak. What did we think of that one?
It's a pretty righteous car. I really enjoyed driving it, more so than I expected to. I mean, we get a McLaren come into our parking lot, and you're like, well, this is a pretty spectacular car. It's not something we get to drive a ton. Pricing-wise, I mean, we get to drive cars that are that expensive. But when you see a McLaren with the way the A-pillar hinge doors come up, there's just an aura around it. And getting inside of it, I mean, it's really, I'm a tall guy, and it's pretty comfortable. Once you get in, of course, getting in is one thing and getting out. But once you're in, you're fine. I was surprised at the road manners. It really wasn't that big of a deal to drive at an easy pace.
That was something John Davis said when he was talking about it. He said that, on the road, it's a pretty well-mannered, comfortable. It's not a grand touring car, but it has a little bit of that sort of grand tour, although he said if you hit a pothole, it'll shake your teeth loose. It's sure. Like on a regular road, you're doing just fine, but you hit boom, and it'll just rattle your brain.
But yeah, it is more similar to the GT than the Coupe, so it has the additional sound deadening, the nicer interior, more storage space. I thought it was tricked the way the top worked. Like when you have the top up, you could open just the back part, and you have a whole lot of storage space back there. I thought that was pretty trick. But, you can't say it's too much. I mean, the car just drives so nice. It's almost like driving a Boxster around. It feels way smaller than it physically is and not intimidating at all.
Yeah. It's a lot like a race car. It's kind of Spartan probably isn't the right word, but very technical. It's like they don't go out of their way to make things look
fancier than
right. It's just like, here's your buttons. This is what this one does. It's easy to tell. Small screen.
I like the blue and orange.
Yeah, and like McLaren has this personality, and they don't get too far away from it. Like it or hate it, that's who they are. They're kind of like, I would say, more on the nerdy side of the spectrum when it comes to supercars, performance cars. And again, back to just the comfort of driving it, there's a lot of fast cars that don't like to be driven slow, and this one was not that way at all. I mean, you can just cruise through a slow section of your town if you want to show off to people, and you're not getting bucked back and forth trying to get through it like below 30. Yeah.
Yeah, McLaren's done a really great job, and their sales are going crazy. So.
Right, they seem to be expanding, which is usually a small boutique manufacturer like that. You always kind of wonder, are they going to be at death's door next month? But they seem to be really making money.
Yeah.
I will say, it's in an era of so many turbocharged cars, this one's still like has the most turbo lag of any car we drive, right?
Really?
It's like, do they do that on purpose just because that's how turbos were up until, a few years ago? Or
I think it's definitely a personality. They want to maintain that personality.
Because it's like you start off and there's nothing, and then that boost hits, and it's everything you've ever read about turbo lag. It just like comes in and strikes you in the chest.
All right, let's do this. Let's get to a bunch of viewer questions here. We're just going to rip through them and get through them as fast as we can. Starting from Jeff, which company has the best self-driving tech, and do you like any of the systems for mind-numbing traffic slogs?
I was just coming back in DC traffic in the BMW M5, and I did use their version of, I don't know what they call it now, but radar cruise control, and it stopped itself. Up until a point, it would actually take off again. If you come to a complete stop, as long as you take off within like a second or two, it'll do it on its own. Otherwise, you just have to press the gas. It didn't take long to get comfortable with it. The only thing I would say is that it's just a little aggressive on the brakes. But then again, it's an M5. A computer can't even slow that thing down calmly.
Right. I think Volvo has a good system. I drove what's the sedan? S90 sedan with their Pilot whatever.
Pilot Assist.
Yes. It intervenes a lot more than just a standard lane keep radar cruise system would, but it doesn't, at least on my particular trip that I had, it didn't seem to intervene in like a threatening or scary way. So Volvo's system is good.
I've driven most all of them. I'd say for highway use, the Cadillac Super Cruise was definitely
It's a league
the
of
best.
its own.
Stop and go traffic, which she's referring to. I think the Audi system and the A8, A6 did a super good job of stopping and starting traffic.
You have to mention autopilot because they did kind of pioneer quite a few things, and they are
Tesla, you mean?
Yeah. One of the few systems to actually change lanes when you put your turn signal on, which Super Cruise cannot do. Super Cruise, in my opinion, like you said, is probably the most impressive and does exactly what it says it'll do on the highway. It will not change lanes for you if you put your blinker on. But
Aren't all Cadillacs going to have Super Cruise as an option soon?
Eventually, yeah.
So.
All right, moving on. Do cars with moonroofs get hotter in the summer because there's only a screen to block the sunlight? That's from Paul.
We've never done like a thermometer
That'd be an
test,
interesting
but
test. We could do
I would
that
assume
easily.
you can tell if you're driving on a really sunny day and you still have like the fabric sheet pulled over. You can still feel a little bit of sunlight on your.
Well, we
skin
had a
and stuff.
BMW X1 long term, and more than one person complained about that very thing. They were on a long highway drive, it was sunny, and their head was getting hot from all the sun coming through. So that is definitely the
Although
case.
don't have any hard data for it, but
The nice thing about moonroofs is you can leave them cracked in a parking lot to let out hot air while your car's parked. But yeah, if depending on the type of fabric they have to cover it up when it's closed, sometimes the fabric's not thick enough to block all the sunlight.
Next from Larry, will you be reviewing the new Buick GS? We're thinking of buying one and value your opinion.
the Regal, is that?
Yeah, the Regal
Yeah.
Grand Sport.
Are we?
I would assume so.
Yeah, I'd have to
it's-
imagine.
It's out. I'm not
It's
sure.
one of those things. Buick it's out of dealers, but Buick didn't do a huge push for it in the automotive journalism.
Some of it
world.
happens too. Like the Regal hatchback was all new. We do that, and then we do the wagon version, the Tourex.
See, that's what I was
So
thinking
it's
of.
like, do we want to do a third Buick? And that's so. I'm sure we will get around to it eventually. It just hasn't happened yet. Do we like? This is from Bruce.
No, read the question. Do your experts?
Do
Thank you,
experts
Bruce.
like or dislike CVT transmission, and why?
Depends on what you're trying to do. If it's a performance car, it's kind of a joke. But if it's a daily driver,
You wouldn't have one in a performance car, except, I mean,
Like
WRX.
like
is weird.
Lexus or something,
But
yeah.
no
But-
one would want that anyway.
But I mean, if it's a daily driver, I drive a 2015 Subaru with a CVT, and I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I mean,
If you would have asked me maybe 2 years ago, I would have said absolutely dislike them 100%. But there's been a couple just recently that do a good job. The Honda Accord one, I think, is pretty fabulous. There's been another one or two, but generally no. And mainly if you do a lot of like merging on highways and stuff, just the engine noise gets incredibly annoying.
that is the one thing I don't like about the
that's-
Subaru system. Is
yeah.
if you're really putting the pedal down, it kind of just does nothing. It gets like angry, but it doesn't go any faster.
We actually had a question on Facebook similar to this one. It was just asking why we don't like CVTs, because I think we do come off as disliking CVTs, but it's for that exact reason. They're loud. They don't offer the performance that we want as enthusiasts, but at the same time, I mean, and this is just since I've been here, they've gotten 10 times
much better.
Yeah, and
But they've been around for about a decade now. I mean, it's not new technology.
I think the average person gets into a car probably would not even be able to decipher which transmission they're
I think
in.
the last problem area is the merging thing, like you said.
Well said. Joseph asks, is the Dodge Charger getting a body style change anytime soon?
I believe they're up for one. If
It's
not
time,
all new,
but
right?
they haven't
Yeah.
said a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely in the works, but there's still some debate about what chassis it's going to be on since
Whether it's going to be a Giulia-based thing or
or Maserati even with the new or Alfa Romeo somewhere.
I keep hearing all these rumors that FCA has all these designs in the pipeline, but they haven't launched them. Like, where's the
Exactly.
Jeep truck? Where's the Wagoneer? It's just like they're.
So I think it'll happen, Joseph. But we don't have any inside info as to when.
When we know, you'll know.
What's the best full EV with 100 plus miles of range? And what's the best PHEV? This one's with no name, so I'm assuming Joe made this one up.
No, the guy had he wrote an email to us, but he didn't give us his name. It's just like his email address, and I don't want to put
How you
that
know it
out.
was a guy?
I don't.
Just assuming, Joe.
The individual.
Well, we've just got fired, all of us.
Anyway, what's the best EV out there?
Oh, man, we could talk about this for a whole podcast. I mean, it depends what he wants. If he only wants 100 miles of range, you're talking Leaf or, you guys all love the Kia Soul EV, but I haven't driven
I don't think that. Does that get over 100 miles?
Maybe like 95.
So.
I think it's just under. Yeah, I see. Still kind of. I haven't driven an I-Pace. You drove the I-Pace.
I drove the I-Pace.
So I think you got to go take that.
Yeah. It's definitely the best one I've driven to this point.
Better than any Tesla you have.
Better anything that's not Tesla, put it that way. I would say Tesla still.
I think you have to default give it to Tesla because as much as we've been giving Elon Musk flack the last couple of months, I mean,
they still build
reality
cool cars.
Is, it's still a very good.
But
EV.
if you're talking on the cheap end, if you're talking cheaper EVs, I like the I like Leaf. I like the e-Golf more than I like the Leaf. The Volkswagen e-Golf. That thing's fun. And then plug-in hybrids, just go listen to our last podcast. We had a viewer question about that.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, almost everything now you can get a plug-in version of it, or will be able to soon.
I will say I was surprised with the Pacifica plug-in. I was actually able to get a lot of my commute done in one battery charge. That was cool.
And that thing has serious oomph if you need it, too. So
I missed it.
The only problem is when you do get the plug-in hybrid, you lose the ability to go stow and go,
right?
Which is actually a big deal for a lot of people with minivans.
Because the second row is where the battery goes.
Yeah.
But the Pacifica plug-in's definitely well executed. It's kind of like a car that needs a little more press.
How are we time-wise? We can keep rolling?
You got 7 minutes.
All right, let's go. Electric cars gaining in popularity. Automatic transmissions getting better by the day. The increasing integration of safety features. Is there any way the manual transmission can survive? This from Jimmy.
That's dramatic.
I mean, I think it will. Just if it's possible, it'll get even
less popular.
Available
be like
than it is right now.
0.001% of the market.
The truth is we just don't need them anymore, and
we love them, but we don't need them.
It's getting harder and harder to make a case for them.
It's a horsewhip kind of thing, right? Like,
but what was it? The Civic Type R? That's manual only, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's still quite a few manual only cars.
Yeah, I think they'll survive, but in extremely limited tasks. Cheryl has an issue. It's too long to read all of it. She doesn't like the fact that fuel doors on her vehicle are on the passenger side. She thinks it's unsafe. Why can't it be on the driver's side?
Right. Concerns about filling up gas late at night. You're on the opposite side of your car. Somebody can climb in or that sort of thing.
Well, I think it just comes down to packaging.
Yep.
And I think a big reason most American cars and most cars designed for America put them on the passenger side was that
in Europe they'd be on the driver's side, right?
Well, that when you ran out of gas and you had to stand alongside the road and pour gas from a gas can in your car, you wouldn't be in traffic. You would be opposite of traffic.
See, I thought it was because in Europe, like it would be on the driver's side, and they're just European models that have been Americanized, but they can't reroute the gas line. So sorry you feel unsafe, but it really just comes down to packaging at this point. Floyd wants an Accord, but there's no longer a V6. He refuses to buy turbos. He doesn't think turbos have the reliability of V6s. What do we say about that? We were talking about this before the podcast. There's diesel semi-trucks on the road that have turbos with 1 million miles on them. I mean, granted, they're built more heavily than a Honda Accord, but his concern isn't with the engine or the engine block. His concern in the email is with the actual turbocharging unit. I mean, I don't know what more evidence you want. There's lots of diesel trucks, diesel pickups, diesel cars that have had turbos for 30 years, and they last 200,000 miles.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they were saying this when they were using those turbos in the 80s, but it's 2018, and we are pretty good at building turbos at this point. We've been doing it for a while, and we certainly drive a ton of them. And if they were blowing up on a regular basis, we would be hearing about it for sure, and we just aren't.
Especially with Ford and their EcoBoost stuff at this point. I think they did have some fire problems with that 1.6 liter or whatever, but
yes,
I think they got that straightened out.
Yeah.
Moving on, Start Tech from David. Start-stop technology may save at the pump, but does it cause battery drain? Are there problems in cold climates? David wants his engine running all the time.
In case of a zombie apocalypse.
What do we think about stop-start?
I can certainly sympathize with you there. I did not like start-stop, and I still don't love it. There's a lot of cars that don't do it well, but there are quite a few who do start and stop pretty seamlessly. So I don't have a problem with that, and I've even gotten used to the idea of sitting there and not wasting fuel. So I understand where you're coming from, but again, they've kind of solved problems with this too. It's well tested.
I don't particularly care for it, but to answer his question about battery life, it's such a small drain on the battery. I mean, the motor is still running and turning the alternator like 80% of the time.
Right. It's worth noting it's not a traditional starter in there. They have a bunch of heavier duty things to get the car started. I guess that's about all we have time for.
Yeah, we're coming up here.
Thanks for sending in your questions.
We should do this again sometime.
All right, let's do that.
Send us more questions.
Send us your questions.
We'll just wrap up by thanking our audio engineer, Jim Bigwood, podcast creator, Bob Mixter, and, of course, Joseph, our producer. And just remind you to tune in on PBS and on Velocity Network and
the Internet.
Check us out all over the Internet. And
PBS.org/MotorWeek.
Thanks for tuning in.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, WeatherTech, Hum by Verizon, RockAuto.com, and State Farm. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at MotorWeek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.